Okay, so Amihan held an AMA in their Discord on June 12th, 2023. I wanted to provide a summary of what my thoughts were. I usually do gameplay videos, but my main motivation for doing this kind of video is for the community. There were some indications that the AMA would be recorded. The decision was to not record it, and so I think that took some of the community members off guard. So I wanted to make sure that they don't feel left behind. But this is by no means official or anything. This is purely my own thoughts. I may have misheard some things or misunderstood some things. And I was also waking up in my time zone. So the organic operating system was still booting up a bit. So I took some notes afterward and I wanted to share those with you. But again, no means is this official, so take this all with a grain of salt. At points, I'll also speculate on some things, particularly around this new collection we've heard of. So there isn't a lot of info on it, and I don't really blame the team at all for being pretty mum about some areas of what they're working on. Why? Well, there's a lot of bad actors out there. We've already seen last year a fake Twitter account that was really using a lot of the same assets and images, but it was a completely fake project. So, and beyond that, there could be valid projects that are going to try and mimic what Amihan's trying to do here with Everseed, which is very much on the bleeding edge of blockchain tech and even the tower defense gameplay. Tower defense isn't new, but there's a lot of novel concepts they're incorporating on top of their world building and their lore. So there's a ton of rich content. And so I don't blame the team for being secretive about it. So Amihan team, I know you did not record the AMA, and I'm sure it's for a very valid reason. So if you see this and you're having like an Uncle Roger type of reaction.
What he putting this all over now? You make Uncle Roger put leg down from chair.
Then just DM me. I'll make this private so that it's not just out there. But I do want to provide something for the loyal community members who really didn't get to see this. With that, let's jump in. So we had the latest playtest available to us for, if I recall correctly, the better part of May 2023. It was one of the longer playtests available to us and one of the most comprehensive and certainly the most challenging. Team did say that they hit some all-time highs in terms of engagement with us, the players, playtesting, in terms of it sounded like time played, the session length, things like that. But they still have to introduce additional layers into the tower defense gameplay that they have not yet introduced. One of those elements is the randomization. Randomization we already see is when you cleanse blight, it can have some surprising results. Anyway, so this I really want. Oh.
Oh no! Can I put it? Oh no! That was bad, because now they can come in that way. I had to like block around it. Ugh. That is not good.
So that's certainly randomized, and it adds a level of spice to the game that I think is really fun. And the team wants to introduce more randomization. They don't want to, in the next playtest, introduce all of it. They think that it would be overwhelming, which I get. But we should see another element of randomization involved. Now, what would that be? We don't know. Maybe it's the procedural generation of the actual battle map. Like if you think of the little hexagonal tiles when you're on a certain level, having that be a little different each time. An analogy I can think of is growing up, I played a ton of Diablo 2, Diablo 1. And Diablo 1, that was cutting edge for its time. But if you go to a level, or you go into a crypt or a cave or what have you, the map is procedurally generated. It's never exactly the same. It's similar in ways, and it adheres to the laws of the game, but it's different. And that always kept things fresh and unique. But perhaps there are other randomization elements the team wants to introduce. Maybe the different enemy types and what source points they come out of are randomized. I think a pretty rough one would be that I'm thinking of would be if you water, it doesn't always water every tile. That would be kind of brutal, but it might make sense in like an arid desert region. You have very limited water, so it just kind of randomly splashes only on certain tiles rather than the whole area. This tied into the team's response to what is something that, from a design perspective, that's changed over the last year. And one of the team members had indicated that compared to other tower defense games that have influenced the Amihan team, they've seen instances where you can combine different plans to create something new. And that was a pivot. They pivoted away from that. And really, we see more of a scarcity style gameplay where you have to be more strategic about the pathing. We do see elements of an individual plant being upgraded through the watering and through the radiance feature, but not a combination of plants. And I think the gameplay's fun. It's really fun. So I don't think the team necessarily needs to further explore that combination kind of option. And that may just complicate things further, especially with radiance now in the mix. And also, I think it jibes really well with the whole idea of a ranger is they're kind of out in the wilderness fighting the blight, and they're kind of roughing it, so to speak, where they have limited resources. So the idea of you have constraints in terms of what the map's throwing at you, how much you can water, and that really translates from how much energy you have, how many seeds you have, how many infusions you have, what infusions you can use. I think they're really leaning into that scarcity mindset, which again plays really well with the lore and the idea that you're going into the unknown wilderness. In terms of when the next playtest will be, they've said July. So I'm recording this in mid-June, so could be 3 weeks, could be 5 or 6 weeks, but they are targeting for that. And they did seem to indicate it's going to be a pretty significant playtest. Earlier in the year, from just a broader timing perspective, and we'll talk about the open beta timing next. But earlier in the year, what I had heard was closed alpha in the summer of 2023, and then open beta at the end of 2023. From the closed alpha perspective, which I think would be a more thorough vertical slice, like a full gameplay loop, is that the July demo? Maybe. I don't know. But they did seem to indicate it would be a pretty significant playtest. So that's something definitely to look forward to. And on the topic of releases, the open beta, so the team seemed to indicate they're shifting that. Whereas earlier in the year, it was more so end of 2023. It sounds like the earliest that we would see it is early 2024. What I do remember is the team said quite clearly that they want to make sure the game is good. So I don't know Activision Blizzard's kind of release cycle now. I know that for StarCraft 2, Diablo 2, Diablo 3, when I was more following them in that era, they were very particular about it'll be ready when it's ready. And yeah, that made some fans impatient. And I get that. But I'd rather them take their time. If you think of Cyberpunk 2077, that game was years in the making. And when it came out, it was full of bugs, crippling bugs that really ticked some people off. They wanted to play this game and it just wasn't really working quite well. And I wanted to play the game. I was following it for a while and I just waited. I just waited. It came out in late 2021. I just waited until early 2023 and I had a fantastic time because it was nearly all the bugs were wiped. I had very little issues with the gameplay. So I don't blame them for not wanting to rush things out because I think that Project CD Red's still reeling from that pretty rough launch. Okay, so I say if you need more time, take it, get it right. There were several questions about the open world, aka the overworld, where you're kind of walking around in town. We saw a lot of this in the very, very early teaser videos. There were a couple teaser videos that came out very early. If you go back to the inception of Everseed's Twitter, you can find those. You won't see them on the website anymore because they're doing an overhaul of the brand, and we'll talk about that as we get towards the end of the video in terms of the new collection of NFTs. Okay, so understandably, there's a lot in the community, myself included, that not only think the tower defense is great and cool, but to actually get back to town after being out fighting the Blight and kind of, not unlike Diablo, you know, I go back to that because I played that a ton as a kid, but you go back to town, you kind of unpack your bag, your inventory, and you kind of have a sense of relief. It's kind of a release in attention when you're going out and fighting, and a release, you go back to town, you feel safe. Your strategy changes. Now you're focusing in on your gold and your equipment. So understandably, there's a lot in the community that are very excited about this. And in all the playtests we've been in, it's the rogue style gameplay where you're going down a certain track and you have to survive till the end. Now you may get some stuff along the way, but you'll get the most benefit and rewards if you stick it out to the end. We haven't had any type of social hub or community within the game. It's purely in Discord. And so I think the community is really itching to have their favorite ranger that represents them, and being able to run around in town and interact with others. I think that's going to be really, really cool if the team can pull that off. So there were questions about, hey, are you guys working on this? Because we haven't seen anything from a demo perspective up to this point. The team was pretty quiet about it from what I'd heard, but they seem to indicate they're working on something. So that gives me optimism. It's going to still be very much a thing. We just don't know much about it. I threw a question out there to the team about defending against click farms, bots, any type of anti-cheat mechanism, multi-accounting, all of that stuff, because it's going to be pretty vicious. It already is an issue. There are certainly click farms out there that will artificially inflate an Instagram profile or what have you. I can only anticipate it's going to get worse when there's actual potential earnings of real world monetary value in the game, whether you're talking companion NFTs or infusion or plant NFTs, ranger NFTs, the rewards that come from doing a run. If there are sinks and faucets built in that actually allows people to earn within the game, you better bet there's going to be people that are going to try to game the system. I was encouraged by what I heard from the teams that they're very much thinking about that. They're doing their research on it. They did mention, I believe it was Vanguard, which is for Valorant. Vanguard is like a very robust, like kernel level software that is required if you want to play Valorant. And it prevents software that is intended to auto aim or just cheat in general. That would also operate at the kernel level, which is closer to the metal, so to speak, in the software world. The team is aware of these things, so it's heartening to know that they're looking into this and keeping their eyes on that. In terms of other entertainment channels, very much what is at the forefront is the video game, but that doesn't mean we cannot consume the Everseed universe through other avenues. Okay, because the team right now is doing a ton of heavy lifting to build out the world. Okay, and that's intellectual property. That's IP. And so once you go through that major lift and that investment of time and resources to build out a really interesting world that motivates people to engage with that and have some form of a healthy escapism in that world, why not diversify? So really it's going to be a win-win for the fans, where we can, play the video game. Oh, we can also maybe buy a stuffed animal, or we can watch a TV show or read manga or a comic book based on that universe. So once you build out the IP, it's a lot easier to then have different mediums or channels by which your fans can interact with that IP. And it's a win for Amihan as well, because as a company, they need to bring in revenue and be profitable. And so if they have this really awesome IP, why not engage in multiple channels? Okay. We see this same strategy play out with very prominent IP like Disney that has Marvel, and Star Wars. I mean, you see not only the movies and TV shows, but the comic books and the plushies that they have and the action figures. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So it's like a very, started out as a very indie, violent comic. And then that diversified into video games and movies, TV shows, action figures. I had a ton of the action figures. We also see it with Skybound. Skybound is lesser known, I would say, than the last two I mentioned, but they're most prominently known for The Walking Dead. And what they're doing is they really focus on comic books and getting traction with that. And you think of Marvel's early days, that was just comic books, and now it's blown up into well beyond comic books. So Skybound's playing with that similar model where they try things out with graphic novels, with comic books, and then things that really catch on, they go, well, this is something here. Let's maybe expand this out. And so they do the Walking Dead TV show, and then that gets big, and then they eventually make their way into video games. Not necessarily this progression, but from what I've heard from following Skybound, video games are very profitable, very, very profitable. With Everseed and with Amihan, we're seeing the video game be the forefront. So not to say it's impossible by any stretch, it's been done before, but where the video game's the starting point. But it is a different approach to start as a video game. There are going to be pros and cons to any of it. So, hey, if you get a killer video game and an experienced team that can deliver on that, then yeah, go for it. That's awesome. On the topic of these different channels, one would certainly be merchandise. So like The Walking Dead, they released wine, bourbon. We already mentioned action figures, plushies. And so one that's kind of come up often from the community is when plushies. And I was surprised to see that the team had sketches. So they quickly flashed on screen. It was Arugi, formerly referred to as Alpha Corgi, the green dog. They had multiple sketches done, and they were relatively quick, but they were specifically for how Arugi might look as a stuffed animal or as a plushie. And so I was distracted by the artwork, and so the team was talking a bit more about it. So it would seem to be on the table. Like, it's not like they're just discarding it, but they don't have like the resources in house, it sounded like, for that, and they'd want to make sure they get it right. And I dropped a line in the thread that, yeah, I like with anything, like, get it right. Ideally, we're going for high quality here, and that may take a bit more time to develop a relationship with a company that can deliver on a high quality plushie and similar merchandise. In terms of the sketches, the style of the Arugi plushie that they were kind of playing around with was very chibi, which makes sense because it's a stuffed animal. You want it to be very cutesy and appeal to really to all audiences and ages. So there were some pretty cool variants. They all had large heads. Some had like necks that you could see a little bit more, and then some just had no neck. It was just kind of like a bean, which is really, really funny looking and really cute. Others had accessories. So you saw some with like Harry Potter looking circular glasses, and then backpacks that kind of pulled in things from the culture, like a little like one had a little handbag, like a shoulder strap handbag. Some had a backpack that you could actually remove. Again, all sketches, but it's just the team starting to think about how a plushie might appeal to a broad audience. Some of them had more beady eyes, which gave me kind of the Funko Pop vibes. Others gave me a bit more of the Nemu Nemu vibes, though the Arugi consistently looked happy, whereas the Nemu Nemu ones, like, very often if you look at pictures, they just look sad. Okay, moving into digital land NFTs. I had asked this question. I don't have an opinion on whether it should definitely be done or definitely not be done. I just want to make sure that it's done well. Okay, so I'd rather them not do it at all than to do it poorly. Okay, but when the team answered this, they seemed to indicate it would not be like a priority thing. I think that the lore in the world, especially with the different cultures and the different art we've seen of the different towns, it could mesh in very well in the future. but the team's not going to rush and try to do something that's haphazard. So I'm all for that. Okay, next up is a big topic, at least for me, as I'm a holder of many of the Genesis Ranger NFTs, and that's a new collection. Okay, so there's very, very strong indications, and you can see them in the AMA chat of straight from the team, and this idea of a new collection coming about. What do we have for collections now? Quick recap is that we have 2 different collections, both on the Solana blockchain. And one is 4,800 Rangers. 5,000's kind of been the total count mentioned in some of the old articles, but 200, to my understanding, are not minted right now. They're, I think, reserved for, they were going to be reserved for like giveaways or team members or what have you. But if you go to any secondary marketplace like Magic Eden, you'll see 4,800. Not all of them are listed. Like right now, as I'm recording this, like in the realm of 100 to 150 that are actually listed. So a lot of people just holding, like myself. The other collection is the Everseed Sprouts. And those were airdropped to holders of Rangers at a particular date and time. I think it was like I want to say it was late summer or early fall of 2022. So all the Rangers were minted around April, like late April 2022. And then several months had passed. And then the Everseed Sprouts were airdropped. And you got 1 per Ranger that you were holding. The utility of those is not really clear yet, but they do tie in with the plants and the infusions that you actually use in the game. But my main focus here is on the new collection that was being talked about, and that would seem to be a new collection of Rangers. And during the AMA, the team showed briefly some of the new artwork. And I would assume it's a Ranger, not an NPC, a non-playable character. I would think it's a Ranger. They showed a couple screens. I was too distracted by the first one, and I took a screenshot. I won't share it just to be respectful to the team. But it was multiple sketches of a single character, and I was like, I want to just like study this because like. It's mind blowing. It's so cool. It's so cool. But before I jump into how that character looked, it's important to like get a sense of where we are right now. So if you look at the Everseed Ranger collection today, the Genesis collection, it is very chibi style. Okay, and what that is very cutesy. Okay, and so you have a disproportionately large head, or I guess you could look at it as a disproportionately small body. Okay, but it's a big head. Big eyes, but I say the main difference between that and what we're seeing the team move towards is the body size. So if you go to Twitter, go look at Everseed, the artwork in the last few months has been starkly different, and the common theme is a full size body that's more realistically proportional to the head. The eyes are still relatively big compared to the face. But that is a common hallmark of many different animation styles, Japanese or otherwise. So the character they did briefly show, again, I'm only speculating this is a Ranger, not an NPC, but you can take Amelia Earhart with her goggles and her like head covering with the little ears being covered, put her in a blue jumpsuit / pilot's outfit. She had boots, so she had like pretty baggy pants, but they were kind of tucked in as you got towards the shin, kind of like Aladdin style almost, the poofy pants, and then getting tucked into a boot. And then give her Johnny Silverhand's arm from Cyberpunk, and then take like a more realistic version of a spiny shell from Mario and put it on her shoulder like Samus Aran. That's a little bit of a sense of the character, and I was like, oh, this is cool because it's so many different elements. I'd never seen a character like that before, and that was my mind was pretty blown by that. So if that's like one Ranger and they're all like bringing something pretty unique to the table, it's going to be pretty insane. So I think the team's putting a lot of thought into the character design, and particularly the ranger design, as those will be the main character essentially, from what I can see. To provide another sense of like where the new artwork is headed, we can certainly look at, if I pull up on screen here, the artwork that was posted on Twitter, I'd say maybe a month or two ago, and this is in line with the newer style. Okay, so the artwork that was teased was similar to this, particularly kind of these close-ups of this character and then a full body. The full body was colored, which was really cool to see, and then there were some just black and white sketches. But this kind of approach they're taking, you can definitely see like the proportion size of the body is way more realistic compared to some of the chibi stuff we saw before. And then the detail of the character, like, could this be the Ranger NFT? Yeah, absolutely could be. I think we have strong indications that this is a Ranger, that this character is a Ranger. This that I have up on screen is the most similar thing that I saw that's public compared to what they showed in the AMA. But to give you another sense of how the latest artwork was looking, I would say it's really similar to Azuki in many regards. Okay, where again, the proportions are more realistic. It definitely has influences from anime or manga, like a Japanese art style. And then if you look at Azuki art, it's really well done. And they're kind of seeming to be on a track of like a neo-Asian plus skateboard vibe. So from like an animation style, that's what I mean, is that it's similar in terms of quality and character proportions and style. But what I think really sets Everseed apart is the clothing and the culture. I'll throw a term out there. I think of like trad tech, like traditional tech. So it seems that you have nature colliding with high tech. That's like the world that Everseed's in. We even see that with some of the enemies that we have battled against. There's like golems that are repairing themselves. There's shield drones that there's tech there. And so it would seem that those have been infested, kind of like an infested Terran from StarCraft, that it was possibly built by humans, but then the humans were forced to flee, and then the Blight found ways to take over these machines and this technology. So you now see a battle going on where there's high tech on both sides, which is pretty interesting. But I bring that up because, whereas I haven't gone super deep into the Azuki world or anything, but Everseed is really adopting a lot of different things from around them and then combining it to make something new. So that character, the Amelia, I'll call her Amelia, the Amelia character is very unique. I've never seen any character like that in any game. And I think that style jibes really well with the lore, which is it seems that we have these rangers that are bravely going out to fight the Blight and protect their towns. And to do so, they're combining nature and technology. And along with that theme of trad tech, they had a really cool scene that they flashed of an arcade. Not a game arcade, but like the old school arcade where it's like a passageway that's covered. I've only been to one. It was in Boston. There was an arcade between two buildings, and it's really cool. So you walk inside, and there's multi-levels, and there's kind of different stores, some people with little booths out. Really, really neat. And so the picture they showed, it seemed like an arcade, but it was a workshop or a manufacturing plant. There was somebody at a desk. It was a wood tabletop desk, and it was supported by like tree stumps. That was like the base, and the person's sitting down at the desk, and they had some papers and stuff, and then they had it looked like a computer monitor. If you think of a monitor, if you played the latest playtest, if you open the shop modal, it kind of had those vibes where there was a top border and a bottom border, and then kind of a translucent screen with things coming up. So it was almost like an augmented reality type of screen where you could see stuff on the screen, but also look through it. It also reminded me of in Ready Player One. They had like the screens, like the tablets that you can pull as much as they want, and it creates a screen. It was very reminiscent of that. In terms of what they were building, there were like these big, it looked like bipedal bots, like they had legs, it looked like, and it looked like it could be manned by somebody like actually stepping inside it and controlling it. It reminded me of those the bipedal bots in Mega Man X. If you ever played that, that's the vibes it gave me. But I don't know if that's actually going to be controlled by somebody or it's just like an Everseed harvester. It wasn't clear. Okay, so in terms of this new collection whitelist process, not really anything was discussed that I had at least heard. So this is pure speculation. What I can say is what came before us. And the minting for the Genesis Rangers was very successful. And so what the team did is they had, for 24 hours, people that made it onto an Allowlist. And in that window, they could buy an elixir, which is like a little blue potion, and that would grant you essentially a ticket to mint a ranger. And then in the next 24 hours, a different set of people were on a broader wait list, and they had the same opportunity. After those first 48 hours passed, then there was another 48 hours where you could actually customize your ranger using the avatar creator. And that is where you could change up the hair and the facial features. And then that window closed, and finally they were minted, registered on the blockchain, and then they were given randomly actual NFT attributes, which you will see if you go on Magic Eden. You'll see the headgear type and the clothing type and the color for both of those, as well as a background and the color of the background. And some have backgrounds, some don't, but they all have a background color. So I wouldn't be surprised if a similar model is used. I would certainly trust the team not to do what some other projects do. I don't know why these other projects do it, but some of them just don't understand that there are going to be bots out there. If you don't gate this to some degree, there's going to be bad actors that will game the system, and they will have bots that just wipe out the collection. So I think the team was very, very thoughtful about the Genesis minting process. I would expect the same for the next minting. The team has reiterated on multiple accounts that they're going to take care of those who have been involved. Okay, so if you're dedicated to the project and you want to be in on this second collection and be able to mint, again, will seem to be a whole new set of rangers. The team's going to take care of us. And what is really cool is the team, compared to last time where it was just kind of Discord involvement and some questions and applications that were applied, the team has a lot more data points for who's been involved and on many different levels, whether it's NFTs or not. Okay, so there's favor, which is kind of a loose form of staking, but you basically have rangers in your wallet. You link your wallet to Discord via Matrica, a third-party tool. And so the team's able to know how many rangers effectively that you have. And then as long as you keep them in there, you don't list them, you just keep them in your wallet. It's kind of a loose form of staking. You'll earn favor, and it's an hourly earn based on how many rangers you have. I think I could be wrong, but I think it's like 10. Once your ranger travels to your location, again, it's not in the game or anything, it's just kind of a symbolic location. It takes like a period of time to travel. I believe it's like 10 favor per hour per ranger. So the favor is actually a numerical value that the team can use to measure, at least purely from an NFT loyalty perspective, who's been sticking out the longest. And the time factor is pretty cool too, because that means that somebody who's been holding 10 rangers for the past year is going to have a whole lot more favor than someone who just bought 50 rangers yesterday. The other element would be the ranger NFTs themselves, which is a more static indication, like looking at a snapshot today, how many rangers does a given person have? Okay, that's less indicative than the favor, but it is an aspect, right? Because someone could have maybe started with 20 rangers that they were holding, but now they're only holding on to like 2 because they maybe got a bit more cold feet or they had other financial obligations. Another element that the team has is Ranger level. So in the early playtest, you could actually earn experience and then level up. And I think we get up to like level 7, I want to say. I could be wrong on that, but we were actually able to level up the Rangers. The team was asked about that. They did say that there aren't plans to reintroduce the leveling in the upcoming playtests, but rather that the experience and the leveling would more likely show up in the open beta. But I totally get that. I think the team doesn't want to create too much of a disparity between someone who's never played the game before and they want to play the open beta for free, and having them not feel super left behind, that they're coming in at level 0 and there's already a bunch of people that are level 20 that are really good at the game. So I think they want to kind of minimize that disparity. I would also wager, we don't know this for a fact, but based on how the team has indicated that new all-time highs were hit in the latest playtest, I would speculate they know how many hours each of us has played. I would be not surprised by that. I think they have pretty granular data, I would imagine, and I'd imagine they also see things like how many times certain radiance abilities are used. But that's a whole other topic. All to say, I think that they can see pretty granularly how much a given player has played the game, which is, again, another form of loyalty to the team. They've also asked us for feedback. So have you been submitting Google Forms when they've asked for feedback? That's super helpful on the team. Has that as a metric as well. And then there's also Diddits, which I think is quite cool because it's a soulbound NFT minted on Solana, and we get those for being involved with the community events that happen on Discord from time to time. Okay, and what's neat about the Diddits is that since it's soulbound and it's on the blockchain, it's proof that you were in attendance at the event and stuck around to the end for the team to essentially snapshot who was there, or you clicked a button in Discord to say that you were there. And then on that note of the Diddits, I think there's been some understandable contention for this being a global project, that some people just couldn't make the Evervent, which is the Discord event, because of time zone differences. And so they were asked about, can you offer an Evervent, like the same Evervent twice, please? And there was a very emphatic yes from one of the team members to offer that, which I think is awesome. Because if this is going to be a global game and a global community, it makes a ton of sense that while there's a lot of the team based in the US, to be respectful to those on different time zones. Now, in terms of the actual minting process itself for this new collection of possible new Rangers with new amazing art, the team has indicated that they're going to be wanting in the long term to be on multiple blockchains. And I think the kind of scenario that they might find themselves in right now is the Web3 space is still so relatively young, and we could maybe see more integrations in the future between these different blockchains. But we can see that the team wants to diversify and not just be all sitting on Solana, which is the current state. Will there be more interoperability between the different blockchains? Yeah, we could certainly see that. But I think that the team does certainly have that mindset of wanting to be having different NFT collections on different blockchains. So what does this mean for those who are holding Genesis Rangers? Okay, if there's going to be a new collection of possibly new, much better looking Ranger NFTs, what about us holders on the Genesis collection? That was my main concern, is that I don't want to be left behind. Being devoted to this project, not only from a holder perspective, but from an involvement perspective, I didn't want to feel like I was abandoned. Some other projects have been pretty lackluster at recognizing people who've been involved. So there's a couple elements here that gets pretty interesting. I'd say that we could potentially, and this is again pure speculation, depending on when Amihan ramps up their marketing and PR efforts for the project, we could see the Genesis Collection's price go up. But it depends a lot on how the Genesis Collection is going to tie into the new collection. I'm bullish that the new collection, when I say second, I'm kind of ignoring the Everseed Sprouts, but the second collection of Rangers, I'm very bullish that based on that art I saw, that it's going to be very sought after. And that's also going to coincide with a very fun game. So I think there's going to be a lot of ramp up. So I'm not concerned about the second collection. But in terms of the first collection, we could see the price hike if the means by which you are first in line to mint, and perhaps through an avatar customizer or a parlor, design a ranger in the second collection it'd be bananas. If we look back at the original minting and the avatar customizer, I mean, it was a chibi style and there's a lot of different eyes and noses. But man, I mean, if they, with their design team and their artistry that I've been seeing, if they just jack that up on steroids and you can really dial in like a really good PFP, a profile picture of an Everseed Ranger, and you can design it, and your ticket in to do that is that you hold a Genesis Ranger, it's going to be really, those Genesis Rangers are going to be kind of like serving as the elixirs that we saw in the first minting, which means that people are going to want to do that. Because imagine if you can really create an amazing looking PFP that looks like you, or however you want to represent yourself in the metaverse. People are going to want that Genesis Ranger. So, and again, it's going to depend on if there's a ton of hype from the team's marketing prior to the minting of that second collection of Rangers. If the marketing PR doesn't come till after, and the whole minting is a pretty quiet thing in the Web3 space, we may not see the Genesis Rangers price hike up, but it's going to depend on a lot of factors. And that's up to the team to decide how that all happens. Now that's one element. The other element could be, well, the Genesis Rangers and all those unique types of headgear and clothing, are those going to be completely discarded? If you look at some of the old Substack articles, there's a statement that the clothing for the Genesis Rangers would be unique and that they would never be replicated. But Kenny did say that the new collection will overshadow the Genesis collection. And so I said, well, okay, it sounds like then like, what does that mean in terms of a migration? Are the 4,800 Rangers that are minted today in the Genesis collection going to be re-represented with the new artwork in the new collection? So in his mysterious way, he didn't rule out the possibility of a migration, but it certainly sounds like it won't exclusively be a migration. And who's to say that the second collection will be 5,000? Okay, it could be 10,000 like Azuki. So maybe we see the 5,000 Genesis Rangers get migrated, and then there's 5,000 new ones. It could be 20,000. I don't know. It's going to be up to the team to decide the mint price for the new collection and how many there are in the new collection. There's a lot of variables at play here that we just don't know, but I would say I'm very bullish to keep holding my Rangers. I'm certainly not selling any of them. I think that however this transpires, the team is going to take care of those people that are involved in the community in some way. Maybe some people are really involved, but they can't afford a Ranger. And so maybe they'll get an Allowlist or a Whitelist spot, but also people who have a Genesis Ranger will also get the appropriate number of spots to migrate and or upgrade the Ranger. I don't know. I'm excited for what's to come. My main concern was being neglected, and the team alleviated that concern for me. Now, one thing I had not asked about in terms of the second collection is, regardless of migration or not, something that I certainly pay attention to is the distribution of a couple of the attributes. Okay, so on two different tabs here, I have clothing type and hat type. And if you look at the clothing type, there are 25 different pieces of clothing. And in column B, the count, you can see how many of the 4,800 Rangers have each type of clothing. And the chart here shows you the distribution. And so statistically, the Sylvan Garb is the rarest. So the 141, the Explorer Jacket, which is one of my personal favorites, is actually the most common at 264. But there's not a lot of standard deviation here, meaning there's not a lot of variance in the data set. Okay? Sylvan Garb is the rarest, but not significantly so. Compare that to the hat types. The hat types are really pretty unique compared to the clothing type. You can see that there are some hats that are extremely rare. Okay? Caddis Trapper is the rarest hat. There's 2 of them. There's 2 out of 4,800 Rangers. So 0.04%. 0.04. That's a very small number. 0.04% of Rangers have this hat. None of the clothing type have a rarity of that scale. And then all the way at the end, here's Wolfband. There's 423 that have it. And that's one of my favorites too. It's like the little animal ears. And then there's also, unlike clothing, they all have clothing. Some of the Rangers have no hat. Okay, so 686 have no hat. And we can see visually the distribution is so different if I toggle between these two. Now granted, the scale's a little different. Okay, it's 0 to this one just breaking 600, then none. This one's 0 to about 250. Okay, so the scale's a little different, but even so, it's such a different skew. So the standard deviation on the hat types is so massively different. So I do hope that the team is not just going to throw this all out the window because I have spent, selfishly speaking, I've spent more for rarer hats. I've certainly, and I know I'm not the only one there. Others in the community have dropped more dollars for rare hats. And so I hope that that isn't completely washed out. Okay, and I don't think this is an accident. There's no hard and fast rules about when you're generating NFTs, how procedurally generated or randomized it is. I mean, you can even see that with Azuki. Azuki has like out of the 10,000, 9,000 are human. And there's I think 90 that are spirit based. That can't be an accident. And so similarly, Amihan seems to have made a decision to at least allow the system to create a very different distribution on hats versus clothing. And it's created a fun like trading type of scenario where these are very sought after, right? And to support why I don't think it's randomized, I mean, if you look at the trappers, 3 out of the 4, and really Trapper itself is kind of its own little category. It's more so, it looks like a hat. Whereas if you look at Caddis, Spicelot, and Pumpkin Trappers, they all have a similar look where it's it seems like a creature and animal base hat. Like if you think of a trapper, it's one that captures animals and uses their fur for clothing. The Caddis, the Spicelot, and the Pumpkin are all in the top 7 here, along with the Tams. There's only 3 types of Tam hats, and guess what? Those are in the top 7. I don't think that's an accident. And then if you look at something like the crowns, all 3 types of crowns are among the most common. I don't think that's an accident. Okay, so I say this all to say that their decision or their indirect decision to allow the system to do this is something that the team is carrying with them, and it's affected decisions that I and others have done in terms of what we buy. And that oftentimes translates to paying more for these. And I hope that this rarity is retained to some degree. Because again, it's selfishly speaking, but I quite like my collection, and I do have a good number of, I don't have Caddis, but I have a decent number of these rarer hats. So I hope that's not completely lost. So to wrap things up, this is easily the #1 project on any blockchain that I'm involved in. Very bullish on it. Very excited about the AMA. I hope this helps you if you could not catch the AMA, that it at least fills you in a bit more than before. If you enjoyed this, I'd really appreciate a like, a subscribe. That will bubble up this video in the search results. It'll get more eyes on the project and where we're headed. I still think we're very early. There's a lot more coming, and a lot more to look forward to. So until the next video, I'll see you.